Hello everybody, CephalonKet here. Today I want to talk about a game that pretty much everybody has talked about already, but since at the time of this recording I've had over 250 hours in this, I figured I can give my 2 cents. So we're talking about, of course, Baldur's Gate 3, the latest game by Larian Studios. In this video, I have footage in the background of the stream where I had started my second playthrough, so there shouldn't be any spoilers except for the very start of the game. So first of all, I just want to say how happy I am that Larian is finally being recognized as the great studio that it is. I've been a fan since their very first Divinity games, like Divine Divinity, Beyond Divinity, well, Beyond Divinity not so much, but I loved their content since way back then. So seeing how their popularity has increased since Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, and now seeing how they have grown in popularity with Baldur's Gate 3 feels awesome. They absolutely deserve it in my opinion, and I'm glad other people can now see it too. So for most players, Baldur's Gate 3 is their first Larian Studios game. And for those that played Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, they can definitely see the similarities from the previous games, particularly in the combat and the writing. Though for Baldur's Gate 3, the writing has gone to new heights that we haven't seen since the days of Dragon Age Origins. So definitely good times here, and to be reminded of such a good game is always a good sign. So what can we say about Baldur's Gate 3? Let's go over the main categories. So first, let's start with combat. For many, the idea of turn-based combat is not really appealing, but Baldur's Gate 3, just like with Divinity Original Sin 2, has managed to make the combat feel fun and responsive. So personally, I like the turn-based combat in Divinity Original Sin 2 more, but this is a minor thing that did not diminish my enjoyment of the combat in this game. You have hundreds of different spells and combat actions, animations. There is voice acting when characters say specific spells like Ignis or Dol. It makes it very dynamic and I've really enjoyed it. Except when you get 2 misses in a row and you want to die. But other than that, it's really great, I promise. So I've had multiple friends that have started with saying, I'm not interested because it has turn-based combat, it's so boring, looks so boring. And they ended up saying, I actually like the combat once they give it a chance. So trust me, if they turn around and say, yeah, I was wrong, this is your reminder to give it a chance and see for yourself. So next up we have the writing. Another thing I'm glad I've seen everybody mention as a triumph is the quality of the writing. Even in early access, you could see how much love and passion they put in all the characters, in the events, in the complexity of everything that can happen, the decision and how it changes, how things play out in later parts of the game, and it's very, very good. What I specifically love about it is that it knows to keep things light when appropriate and take a dark tone when it fits the story. This is a game that doesn't shy from both extremes, from scenes that are purely for comedic effect, like your companions threatening to kill you because you force them on stage, to watching in horror as you manage to convince a boss to have themselves willingly be butchered by a bunch of undead, effectively skipping a boss fight if you wish. And that ties in with the companions of this game as well, which are all written so exceptionally. Each companion has their own set of morals and personality. It's so unique and expertly written that it's hard to criticize them. I'll talk more about this in the spoiler section because there are certain things I do want to say there, but we'll talk about that later. Companions have multiple paths where they can be influenced to go down on, like Shadowheart's faith, Astarion's hunger for power, Will's self-sacrifice and addiction, etc. Except for Carla, who is perfect as she is and I would die for her, and if you disagree, you're wrong, I'm sorry. By the end, there was hardly a companion I hadn't bonded with, even ones that start out outwardly trying to kill you or dislike you. Their growth is organic and feels natural and is a joy to witness. As for the romances, they're also very well made and beautiful to behold, and I just wish we got more content with them because it was just so good. A romance Astarion, and my god, I was not disappointed. I sadly can't talk more about it without delving into spoilers, we'll talk about that later. Another thing I want to point out, because even though I haven't met a person that hasn't been in love with it, it sadly gets forgotten sometimes, is the music. The music of the game is so good. The sound design in general is stellar. The music that plays as you walk around, to the uplifting epic music that plays when you fight enemies, is just amazing. Hell, a boss starts singing its own theme at one point, for God's sake. Give the game all the music rewards now, they deserve it, it's so good. So what else? Before I go into the spoiler section, to conclude, for those who would like to be spoiler free, this game is phenomenal. Its attention to every detail is astounding, and it's one of the few games that I restarted the instant I finished it because it's just so good, and the need for me to see the different choices and consequences was just too good to take a break from. I don't see myself stopping anytime soon, and trust me, as someone who constantly moves between games because I get bored extremely easily, this is a great fit. So, let's move on to the spoilers now. For those that are going to stop now, thank you for watching, remember to like and comment and all that stuff. Alright, spoilers now. This is gonna be more critical than the previous parts of the video, because it's hard to criticize a game without explaining why and going into spoilers. So this video was made before I got to play with the first big patch of the game, so certain criticisms might and hopefully become irrelevant as I play later. So the performance of the game, now I don't have a beast of a computer or anything, but it's a fairly new computer and I would expect to not have any issues running the game. And while yes, the performance starts out great, there currently seems to be an issue where the performance gets worse and worse the more you have the game running, which is not ideal for my insanely large play sessions and for a game of this type. So this is extremely more frequent in Act 3, the final act of the game, with the city's performance being the worst in the entire game. But like I said, this is before performance patches, so I'm hoping that the performance will get better as they patch the game more. The other thing that I'm trying not to dwell on too much on, because it's just a shame to get caught up on something that is only 1 hour out of 150 in a campaign, is the ending. I couldn't help but be disappointed by the endings in general, they just felt incomplete, not to mention slightly broken. Karlach doesn't really get a happy ending, not all her companions talk after the final fights, and I couldn't even get my final cutscene with my love interest to trigger until I reloaded and let poor Karlach die, just so I could see Astarion one last time. It was weird. The ending in general is a bit bittersweet, and in my opinion for no real reason. Not all companions get a real happy ending. Karlach, as mentioned, either dies or goes to hell, which is her worst nightmare. Will either sells his soul again forever or loses his powers. Astarion starts burning in the sun again or becomes a power-hungry supervillain. Shadowheart devotes herself to Shar or has to kill her parents. Halsin... well, Halsin is just underwhelming in general, unfortunately. He was added last minute, so I guess we have to be more understanding, but he doesn't even get any personal content after Act 2, except for one scene if you romance him. I'm not mentioning Minthara because I haven't done an evil playthrough yet. I just feel like there was something missing in the ending. While playing the final fight, I was happily reminded of the final fight in Dragon Age Origins, where you also had allies you could call upon in battles there as well. But sadly, unlike in Dragon Age, where you could have a nice little spot after, where you could talk to all your companions at your leisure and leave the game when you're ready, followed by slides that talked about what happened after all your major choices, like the Landsmeet, Orzammar, the Alienages, all of that stuff. In comparison, Baldur's Gate 3 does not have any of these things. You don't get an epilogue. It all felt a bit rushed. That is pretty sad for a game that's otherwise so polished and takes note of your decisions so accurately for the rest of the game. But yeah, that's my main gripe with the game. I didn't experience any noteworthy bugs on my first playthrough. I think I had more on my second one for some reason, but nothing worth putting on my review over. And Laren is working hard on patches, so I trust them to polish the game to a very stable state by the end of their patches. So, that was my full review of Baldur's Gate 3. What did you think? Was this your first Larian game? Are you still on the fence about trying it out? Would you also die for Astarion? Let me know. And don't forget to show your support if you liked the video by liking, subscribing, and all of that. Thank you for watching. Bye bye!
Just a dumb bore. You're relieved.